And all I think
There's
is
the point.
just let them get.
Okay,
Like. these two,
You will get here.
We only have two.
You're lucky.
Yeah.
It's true this year. Glad I looked at you. I don't feel it today.
Yeah.
we're ready.
This meeting will now come to order. We'll have the roll call. Dean? Here. Ed?
Here.
Reagan?
Here.
Garrett? Here. And George?
Yes.
Roxy is absent. Okay, let's stand for the pledge. This is our flag tonight.
Oh, nice.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is audio recorded. And at this time, is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? Okay. Consent agenda, approval of the following: A, city claims to be paid; B, Three Forks Rodeo Arena board claims to be paid; C, zoning and planning board minutes of 11/2024 and 12/2024; pledge securities with Manhattan Bank through 12/31/2024; task order number 17 with Great West Engineering for wastewater system preliminary engineering report for $80,000. Does the council have any questions on the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Does the public have any questions? Okay, so we'll have the vote. Gene,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Garrett,
Yes.
and George.
Yes.
Consent has been passed. Okay, on our public hearings, item number 1, we would like to, is there any discussion on the service area report that we have? Any questions? If you folks have read through it?
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes,
address the council
please
for a second?
help me out.
That's okay. I threw a monkey wrench in this process at about 4 o'clock today. So for you guys who don't recognize me, I'm Susan Swimley. I'm your city attorney. We had advertised, you have to consider the service area report in order to move to approving the resolution. But the service area report talks about benefited areas, and we just got the maps this afternoon. So I don't think it's been adequately noticed for you guys to take action to approve the service area report, which is gonna impact the item where you approve the resolution. But you have noticed for the public, a discussion of all the contents, including the tables. So I thought it'd be really productive, and if we can come to agreement on any amendments tonight, that would be perfect, because then at your next meeting, we'll present you with what is the final service area report with essentially all of the agreements you've reached with regard to modifications. We'll notify that, we'll notice that at the next meeting in February, and then we'll have extra notice so no one will ever complain about that. Questions? All right. Yes.
So that's just a slight detour to this actual proceeding for tonight. So we're still going to be making hopefully some forward motion, but without making a decision on the service area agreement.
Correct. You're going to talk about any modifications, any questions you have. You can even take votes to say, I'd like this to be changed, this word to be changed to that.
Yeah.
Right? All of that can be done, and you can work. I mean, I'm not asking you to do it in that detail. That was just an example. But we can do all of that. You're just not going to take the final motion to approve it. You're going to have us do the edits you approve tonight, and we'll bring it back at the first meeting in February. Okay?
Understood.
Okay, all that being said, I know Gene went through it, I went through it.
George went through it this afternoon. I got some questions. What are your questions, Gary?
I had some questions on the clarification of the sliding scale and what the determination was with the commercial infill, trying to encourage the commercial infill versus just the flat fee that I saw originally. I was
So
looking
what
through the
page are
minutes.
you talking about? We can go there and then
Well,
we
What page are you on?
darn it. Yeah.
What page?
My handwritten notes do not tell me what page this is
Oh.
on. Give me 2 moments to look it up.
Okay,
If you hit Control V, you can type sliding scale, or
There,
Control F, sorry.
and I might be confusing what was discussed in the minutes of the impact service versus what's actually on this piece of paper. So, hold on, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
talks about small scale and large scale commercial. That's,
You on page 4, split cost for residential commercial.
Well, I thought I had a question, but I guess I'm just questioning my own intelligence.
Just remember reading that and then.
Yeah, that there was,
From
that there was a discussion of trying to encourage commercial infill with small mom and pop shops. And I think I'm confusing that from reading the minutes and not this. So I withdraw my question. I'm sorry about that. Sorry for wasting time there.
no,
Okay. No, there's no bad question.
Oh, thank goodness. Only have to last till next meeting.
There is a lot here and I still can't grasp everything, but does anybody have any?
Yeah, I think I would like to rephrase that. It was clarifying in the calculation of the square footage in which there were, there was one commercial calculation overall, and then there was a secondary, maybe service area or something like that, where they were trying to encourage and reducing the impact fee to have people have infill instead of in the new area. And I don't have the exact page of what that is. And but again, not super helpful.
There, you want me to tackle that?
Oh,
Well, Lee,
please, someone tap. it.
that's why we have you here, Lee.
I have a request to the council first. Your impact fee advisory committee, a lot of effort into this. It's a big document with a lot of consideration. They met several times. They spent a number of hours on this. And I hope that the council will do something to express your appreciation back to. I think the question, as best I can interpret it,
Yeah.
is that commercial development comes in a lot of different sizes and packages. And as we work through what's realistic for Three Forks, we could see that we're going to infill existing buildings. We have vacant buildings on the highway downtown. We could see that there might be small commercial buildings that appear on some of the vacant spots that are zoned commercial, although there is, honestly, there's not a lot of vacant, truly vacant commercial land in Three Forks at this point. And so we created impact fees for the infill of existing buildings and small spaces. And that's the impact fee that you see there on the schedules. But there could be something bigger, a larger project or a project that had more demand on public facilities. And so we've also created a category of large scale commercial developments where it is more difficult for the city to predict upfront what the impact fee ought to be. And so you will see a revised impact fee ordinance at some point in the next few months. That creates a process that is also joined with zoning process to say, okay, we have to make a determination of what that fee ought to be. There will be criteria for what that determination is, but those cannot just be ratcheted off of a table and say it's going to be $5 a square foot or whatever. We have to say, hey, And I'll give you an example. Say somebody decided to build an ice cream factory. Be a good thing. Lots of demand for water, lots of pressure on the sewer system, trucks frequently. Could build a building of the same size that was just a warehouse and maybe had an employee restroom in it. No demand on water and sewer to speak of, not much traffic. Those two things should not pay the same fee, right? Because they have different impacts on the city's services. So we have to have a process for sorting that out. And given the small size and scale of things in Three Forks, we think that can be done case by case, guided by some reasonable criteria. Probably at the time of annexation or subdivision, possibly at the time a zoning permit is issued in some cases, but that's the difference I think you're asking about. And the question then is to look back at what we're saying the fees ought to be for infill commercial. The advisory committee took that discussion as far as they could go using the actual numbers. And we came up with a proposal for how much that should be per square foot of building. And it appears to all of us, I think, that it's high enough that it might discourage really small businesses. If you had 1,000 square foot shop, something like that, remodeling or doing. And so the one question, the one policy, political question that's left here is, does the council want to reduce the number that we came up with in the interest of making it easier for small business to locate in Three Forks? That's the policy question. That's the only remaining policy question that really exists here. And the advisory committee decided not to guess what the answer to that ought to be, because that's your job. So there we are. Is there a question back there?
Well, I just thought, and Lee says everything so well.
Introduce yourself to them.
Yeah.
Christina Kavanaugh, and I was on this committee as well, but I think that one of the other things that we kind of factored in when we were talking about this was that these impact fees are not paid unless someone purchases a commercial building and then really changes the usage of that building. So someone purchased a restaurant and they open another restaurant, they wouldn't pay the impact fees that they would pay if they purchased a laundromat and turned it into a restaurant. And so that was one of the things we considered when saying we really want to protect those small businesses and make sure that they're not being penalized on the same level, and saying like, okay, well, to a certain degree, they wouldn't even face these fees unless they were going to change the impact that building had on the existing.
Thank you. That's good. That tells you what the discussion went like. I mean, we talked about this for a long time, actually. So
the table one
mhm.
is the first sort of
Right.
file, and then the reduction proposals in table two.
Exactly.
But that doesn't give a reduction for infill commercial, does it?
No,
It doesn't?
it does.
Yeah.
It reduces it once. The
Right.
question is that still too high? So in other
Yeah.
words, the committee and Randy and I and Kelly and everybody went through this, and we said, well, we're at $9 and something. We can probably justify cutting that down to what did it come out to, $578. And we thought about that and thought, well, for 1,000 square foot commercial use, that's $580 in round numbers, right? That's a lot for somebody who's starting a small business. And so the question to you as the council is, do you want to reduce that? You can't raise these fees, right? There's a legal justification. You can't arbitrarily raise these fees, but you don't have to charge the maximum that's allowed.
Can't raise them from table one.
Right, from table one. And so if you think that 578 is still too high, you need to act to reduce it. Now for, if a Family Dollar, another Family Dollar store, or some commercial, Walgreens showed up in Three Forks, the 578 is not an obstacle to them. But for a lot of your smaller, more local businesses, that I don't know. It's up, in the end, this is a policy decision. It's up to you. But you have the opportunity to say that when the final resolution comes back to you in February, that fee will be lower than $5.78 a square foot. Any other questions?
It's Christina Kavanaugh again. I can't be seen on the thing, so for the record, but I also, want to say, oh shoot, I'm gonna forget now because of that entry level, but, or that intro, but,
Listen, don't talk, it'll come back.
I know, it's just getting very important. Oh, I was gonna say that the other thing that we really factored in was that even though we as a committee were super protective of our local small businesses and people trying to just do the family operated thing, we did every time we went down that road, what counterbalanced us in like leaving this as a policy decision was it is super fair when you consider every local community, like half of Bozeman and Belgrade, you know, it's not even close to, is this even fair? You know, it is super fair. And we kept coming back to like, we want to make it really, really easy, but we have gone out of the way to make it based on surrounding communities and not just Bozeman, but like Livingston and all these other smaller places. So it's just something to consider that we were really trying to be like ultra protective, but it is still super fair based on the local rates across the board for impact fees.
So
The 949
Mhm.
or the 578?
Well,
578 is where
yeah.
we ended up.
578 is where we ended up, but even the 9 was very fair
Gotcha.
when we were looking at the other communities.
I mean, if I'm building a Walgreens, I'll pay you the $10
Yeah.
per square foot.
The
But it
base
seemed
zone.
like an awful lot for if I'm building a local quilt shop, shall we say, bicycle repair shop, things that you might like to have in Three Forks. And so it went down to 578, feeling that we could do that by reducing it the same amount as we reduced some of the residential things to adjust for wastewater fees, for grants actually, that we knew were going to fund wastewater. So having made that adjustment, that's as far as the numbers take you. At this point, it's a political decision, and that's what you guys are here for.
Wasn't the 578 up to a certain square footage?
It's up to 4,000 square
Okay,
feet.
okay,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, yeah, you're right. There
Okay.
is, it's, you get into a different category if you have more than 4,000 square feet, or if you have a big water meter. But most of the businesses we're really talking about are not going to be that big.
So what will the city use to determine what is a small business and what is a large business?
The definition now is that you pay this fee if your water meter is an inch or less and you're 4,000 square feet or less.
Yeah, but if you're for instance, you can use a pretty small building, have a very small water meter and sell marijuana and make lots of money.
Yeah, but this isn't about how much money you
Yeah.
make. This is about your
well,
impact on the
yeah.
city's
A
facility.
minute here, you're
Yeah.
saying how much money you can make, but we're also talking about a small business getting started, so we're talking about money. Isn't that
Yeah.
correct?
That's correct.
And so, I mean, even if you had a small building that was a branch of a bank, banks are kind of noted for making money.
But it's based on impacts to our
We're
system.
talking about,
So
talking about the
if-
impacts to the
If
system.
the bank has 800 visitors a day, it's gonna have a, you know, like, then it's a big branch and it's gonna have all sorts of people on the roads and need parking. And so like, then it hits in that transportation impact fee. But its water size might be the same as a residential house.
So everything we're
It has
gonna,
a
it's gonna
small meter.
determine a small or large business is gonna be determined by
Use.
the water use
Water
not
usage in square feet.
and square feet. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, so easy
So
to
it's
measure.
not, the thing I don't wanna get into is an arbitrary thing to where Kelly has to determine what ones are gonna be. And I guess my next question is, I guess it's up to the business to decide how big of a water meter they want.
Well, the city would have something to say about that. If I showed up and said, I'm gonna put in a McDonald's and I only need a 3/4 inch water meter, the city is probably gonna say, No.
There was a example, I mean, a real example in Three Forks was Legacy Telecommunications when they annexed in and they're building, I think it's a 10,000 square foot facility. And it has one bathroom. And we questioned that their impact, you know, like their impact fee should be based on their, and our old impact fee was based on square footage alone. And so it was X number, which was huge in the water and sewer department. And they came in and explained they have one bathroom, everybody comes into work, puts their stuff in the work truck, goes to the bathroom, goes somewhere else all day long, comes back 10 hours later or even days later, unloads the truck, goes to the bathroom and goes home. So they didn't need a 2-inch main based on their size. So it was reduced because of their impact to our systems.
The
My
other-
other question is, so the use of the building changes,
Mhm.
then can you come back in and reassess the impact?
Yes, we're clarifying how that works as we rewrite the ordinance. Because you also might have to get a zoning permit if you change the zoning or change the use of a building. And so we are working on that. It doesn't affect the fee schedule directly, right? It's just a matter of when the fee applies rather than what the fee is.
Okay.
Okay, and so the other thing I will say is that the state law requires and the ordinance requires that a business who thinks this is in one way or another unfair has the right to appeal. And so if Kelly or Crystal says, hey, here's the bill, and they say no, they can pay the bill. And then they can file an appeal and come back here to the council to say, well, we don't think this is fair given our particular circumstances, and you guys, again, you get to have the joy of deciding. Anything else?
I do like the fact that there is a focus on sharing the load in a way that is uniform, that can be predictable, and is still looking forward to future growth and not pedal to the metal. Let's get as many buildings and commercial sites in this town as fast as possible. Because I feel like the gas is getting pushed not by us, you know. If we have a foot on a controller, we're maybe touching the brake a tiny bit, it seems like to me. And I think that is a necessary role for us to be in, to protect our town.
Impact fees are fair because they're not arbitrary. I can know upfront if I say, okay, I want to come to Three Forks and build a bicycle repair shop. And that's going to be 1,200 square feet. I know exactly what the fee will be. There's no mystery, there's no arbitrary aspect to it. And so, yeah, it's the best way to do this particular business to help growth, share the cost of things in a fair way.
So can you clarify for the large businesses larger than 4,000 square feet, et cetera? We're gonna talk about that more later.
Ordinarily, the decision about bigness is going to come at the time of annexation or subdivision, but there are some lots and places in Three Forks where it would just come with a zoning permit. But however it's going to be permitted, then we have to do more analysis of what the impacts really are. And it's back to what Crystal was just saying. That's a big building, but its impact on city services is not quite zilch, but not very big. Whereas if I took that same 10,000 square feet and said, I'm going to have Ben and Jerry's West and make ice cream in Three Forks, the impact would be very, very different. And so there's no way around having to have a discussion, right, about how this is going to work. And it's very hard to anticipate precisely and specifically what those are going to be, right? No way to, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So the situation you're describing, I'm hearing that there's a way if say the developer is unhappy with their bill,
Mhm.
they have an appeal.
They have the right to appeal to you as the council.
Is there a mechanism built in, or is that what we're discussing right now, where we know that a large business with a huge impact fee is coming, or a huge impact is coming in, the normal impact fee would not meet their needs? Is that what
That's-
we would be setting in zoning or something like that?
Well, that's the large scale development process, and it's gonna raise other questions besides about impact fees, right? Traffic issues, the impact it has on the streets. Depending on where they put it, it may impact water and sewer distribution and collection systems. A bunch of different potential impacts, right? And so there's gonna be a discussion at either the subdivision or the zoning level about the impacts of that, and the impact fees are gonna be wrapped into that. And you'll be able to say, well, they would pay, let's say you guys keep the 578. They would pay 578, and for 100,000 square foot building, that'd be a pretty big bill. And it might be justified or it might not. But we also have to take into account the parking, all of those other factors. So there will be a process that the impact fees are wrapped into, but is also a larger land use decision-making process.
Can I clarify something? The 578 is just the transportation.
Oh, that's your, yeah.
$9.49.1 or whatever, 50 cents is what the actual total impact fees would be. So that's the 578 is for transportation.
So the 578 is where you have the ability to change.
Yep.
Right. And
To make it lower.
to make it lower.
9-1.
9.491.
That's the question. I mean, there are other questions that you all are free to raise about this, and we'll do our best to answer them. But the question that we're asking you to answer is about whether that is too forbidding for small businesses, and you want to reduce it. That's the question to you guys.
So it went from $20 to the $9, changing that one number.
So I guess that is the second item in our public hearing, is to discuss the fees. What we're asking now is on the draft. And I know the fees are in it, but we are going to be discussing the fees, especially the transportation back. So do we have any more discussion on, any more discussion on the draft?
It read really well, as far as the legal document.
I thought so.
Randy, I'd like to second what Lee said and everybody else is kudos to the committee that worked on this, the people that gave up their nights and time to put this together, and to the staff who did a lot of work on it. I'm pretty impressed with it, and it's kind of interesting to see how you get to these figures. And then the little bit of discussion in there on some of the stuff on how they justified getting to where they were. And so, thank you, young man. I'm
And
glad to see that.
Ally Fendler's on too, and she was on the committee too.
Okay. Yeah, and thank you. I mean,
Thank you.
lot of work, and to me, I have a real hard time finding any fault with any of this. I think the thing about the transportation cost, the 578 or whatever, is a pretty minor thing to whether, if you were gonna go lower than 578, how much lower are you gonna go? I guess I'd have to have some reasoning for me to lower it, is for somebody to say, we thought that was too high and this is why. And so right now, after reading this over, I'm pretty impressed, and I don't really see any reasons to change a lot of stuff unless somebody else comes up with. Pretty good, actually.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess that this discussion has ended, and then at the next meeting, we will have
Well, I'm not saying it ended, Randy. I'm happy with it. I don't know about everybody else. I mean.
I'm asking you. And at our next meeting, we'll have go over it one more time with the recommendation to accept it. And we'll have an ordinance coming up the line for it. Probably in March. Any more discussion on this?
Just one last thing, while reading it, when I was having questions, I found that if I went back through the minutes of the meeting,
I love the minutes.
the people were asking the same thoughts and the same questions that I had, and were drilling down and getting those answers that is reflected back on the document itself. And it was nice to be able to refer back to that and see kind of the questions and the whittling down to the right answer, it felt like.
Crystal wrote, that's what it was.
Thank you, but the board came up with all the information.
But yeah, I agree with you, Garrett. I went over the minute. We could really help me out.
It shaved off a lot, like it allowed some real life examples to why these are the way they are, and that was very beneficial.
People into a legal document.
Yeah.
Okay,
So are we not talking about the fees?
yeah, the
That'll be
fees are
next.
next, yeah. We are going to talk about the fees because on the fees are the transportation fees and we have a resolution. Passed.
Nope.
No,
Resolution off.
Nope, we're not
The
passing,
resolution's waiting, right?
yeah.
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 we don't have
Resolution for
the,
transportation.
Resolution will go with the service area.
Yeah, I'm talking about,
We can
the
talk-
transportation.
We can talk about it, but we can't pass it.
Okay,
we should talk about. the fees.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, thank you. So, all that being said, is there any more discussion on the fees then? Is that what we want to do?
I guess I'm wondering. So the number 578 is the number that can be lowered. Is that what I'm hearing?
Any of them can be
Oh, okay.
lowered. The 578 is just what the committee, instead of charging $16.50 per square foot for transportation, they came to the 578.
That's the one we could whittle down
Yeah.
lower.
So all the other ones where you see infill commercial, those all added together with the 578 equal the 9.49
And that's per square. foot.
per square foot. So if you have 1,000 square foot business, it's gonna cost you $9,500 for impact fees. So 2,000 square foot, you're looking at 19,000.
That's where it gets.
And they are divided out proportionally to the fires, sewer, water.
If you look up here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would go 65 cents to water, $2.88 to sewer, then the 578 to transportation. Municipal buildings would get $23.50. Fire
That's
protect,
residential.
oh,
You get 5
Uh,
cents.
yep, 5 cents, sorry. And then fire would get 14 cents per square foot on commercials. And fire's only getting $88 for every residential too. That number dropped considerably from what we charged before.
Why is commercial on, I'm just gonna pick on fire, so much dramatically different? Well, one's per unit, the other one's per square feet.
Yep,
Okay, all
yep.
right.
So all the square foot ones add up to the $9.50.
So if you have 1,000 square foot building, you're gonna be talking about $1,400 in fire.
No, 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 no.
No.
It would be $140.
$40.
Yeah,
Most of it's transportation.
yeah, transportation. Well,
Well,
no
that makes
sewer.
more sense.
Oh, no, transportation's higher than sewer. Yep.
And that's because in the CIP, there's more transportation products.
Like now for residential, fire gets $1,003 and they're gonna go to $88.
Do we have any idea what our impact fees would be like? Let's say if we weren't getting any commercial develop, like infill commercial. If we didn't, I mean, I don't know like what the ratio is of residential to commercial as far as what we get from impact fees.
75-25?
It varies with each facility. I shouldn't be talking behind you, so I'll sneak back up here, but for every facility that we considered, we had to decide what the split was. And so for water, Kelly gave me a big printout of the water meter records and I went through them. And I determined precisely, because water meter records are good, I knew exactly what the split was. Wastewater, we assume, is proportional to water because we don't meter sewage, right? So those two are dead accurate, right? And then the others get to be a little hinkier. Because you got to have some judgment, and we just all talked about it as to, okay, in terms of what comes through the door that these guys deal with, what's the breakdown? And that's roughly 75-25. And so I can't think of any way we could come to a better number than that. That's how we did it.
75 being residential, 25 being
Yes.
commercial.
Mhm.
And that, I don't think that's gonna change very much in the future, even if things develop quite a bit. I think that'll hold pretty good.
I mean, nine seems high, but if it's lower than everywhere else around here,
It says like Belgrade. It's
like
about the same.
double.
But in our first impact thing, it was $20.
Yeah.
So they cut it in half.
As much as my instincts are to want to lower it to protect, small businesses moving in, I think we would be doing the rest of the town a disservice for reducing it drastically more than it already has been. There's going to be a point where if we try to protect commercial moving in, we won't be able to have the growth of our infrastructure to meet that. And I like that it has been lowered, and it seems to like it has been lowered thoughtfully. And I like, well, I'm not comfortable with the number, but I think it's a fair one. So that's my take on it.
You got that out. Says it's reasonable.
Reasonable.
So is there any changes on that? Folks, for that table?
Do we need a motion on that?
You did a really good job.
I mean, there's also the southeast residential decrease in transportation on that same, the bottom here.
Yeah.
It shows where the high for multifamily was 7,296 and it was dropped down to 2,541. So that's stuff for you guys to decide also. So the transportation area, or any of the others. I mean, you can make a choice on any of the others too, but
and that was lowered because of grants.
it was lowered mainly because of the same thought.
I think the best thing to say about the transportation is that it is the least certain. We know the least about the timing and the cost. And so it seemed unreasonable to charge the homes that would come in the southeast residential area more than a home that would come in elsewhere in the community until we know for sure. The other factor that enters into that is that the southeast is going to be the project of one big developer. They're going to have an interest in making sure that everything hooks up right. So we will have the council again, will have the opportunity to talk about that and negotiate about that when they show up for annexation. And so it just didn't seem reasonable to charge a quite a bit higher fee under the circumstances of uncertainty and also of the fact that you will have an opportunity at some point in the reasonably foreseeable future to talk about it. And if you need to change it, you can change it. So that's, the rest of these are water and wastewater are really pretty cut and dried. Fire, municipal buildings is just a small fee to get you started on thinking about that question. But, the reason that these things can drop is that you guys collectively have managed very well. There have been good decisions about how the city uses its money. And so Kelly and I sat down with the big fee and went through the cash on hand. It was like, oh, wait a minute. We can build this. The city has also been pretty successful in the realm of grants, and presumably there will still be money available, although that's not as guaranteed as it might have been a few weeks ago. But if in fact that shakes itself out in some way or another, the city's been very successful in getting grant money or loan money. And you can also always adjust your user fees if you have to, right? At least on water and wastewater. So it seemed possible to have a very modest impact fee that would be helpful in getting all this stuff done. But that means that the new businesses or the new homes don't have to carry the whole burden.
Sure. With the transportation fee, and in fact, a lot of these, it looked like they were going to be covering like the studies or the plans. Say there's a study done for the transportation and come to find out there is a massive need that is discovered by someone who does this professionally.
Mhm.
Is there a way for us to reassess these impact fees? at a
Oh,
later date?
absolutely. And the law requires that you revisit them every 5 years. The ordinance that you will eventually see requires that you revisit it every year. Because things in Three Forks are kind of in flux. Gallatin County in general is kind of in flux, right? And so it is, and I've done this in places that didn't even have the same pressure that you may have. For big municipal decisions like this, having an annual review, not a bad thing. And so the ordinance you see will say that the advisory committee will convene on, whatever we say it is, the second Thursday of April and whatever. And take a look at it. And if their discussion is 10 minutes long, that everything's working fine, then their discussion is 10 minutes long. If they say, hey, wait a minute, we have learned any of a number of things. You're eventually going to have to talk about your water system and adding even more than you've been able to get. There might be other things that change. So yeah, and it'll have an annual review, and then they will be able to come to you as the council and say, hey, we either think everything is cool, or we need to change this.
And when you guys adopted the CIP, that was something you said you wanted to have the budget committee do it every year as well. So I think you just threw out April, but I think April's actually really timely for the upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah, so, yeah, but that, you guys will get to decide what that date is when that ordinance comes to you.
We're happy then with all the numbers in on the page 20 on the scale. Crystal, do we need a motion for this,
No, it can all be done next time when we did it with the
for the
maps.
resolution?
With the maps, yeah, we can just make these all appendixes to that resolution.
So at our next meeting then, we will have a resolution for this. And we'll forward that again, okay? My next question, then to Susan.
Yes, sir.
The resolution 436 will be brought up at the next meeting then for transportation.
Correct.
Okay, so we won't have to look at that tonight. Thank you. So I guess our next item is there's no other questions then, council, for this tonight? Okay. Our next item will be report of officers. And Kelly,
I don't have anything.
Crystal?
I have a lot. So the first thing is kind of right after our last meeting, Tyler Palmer reached out to me and asked if any of you electeds would be interested, well, it's staff too, but I told him staff's probably a little too busy. You guys might be too, in teaching any course on a civic topic at the adult education, that the school put out this spring. So it's from March 17th to May 1st, and you can either do one night a week for a 2-hour course from like 6 to 8 p.m. or two Tuesdays. No, it's 4, it should be 4 Tuesdays. I wrote 2, but he said 4 in his text. For an hour class. So it's a weekly, I think, any of you guys ever done any of the education classes at the school? they change every year about what they could be. It could be a dance class, a cooking class, a workout class, a,
Welding class.
welding class. They've done pottery class. Like it changes every year because they ask the community to teach a course. So, he was thinking if anybody, you know, in the government thought community involvement would be a good course. Hey, Christina. Maybe it's you.
Does anyone want me teaching that?
Yes,
Just start showing.
From
up,
your
and then
experience.
I know, right?
they'll hand
Yeah, just start showing up.
It's really
So it actually is a paying gig. It's $30 an hour, and I had told him that I would relay it to you guys, and then you don't have to decide tonight. But let me know if any of you would be interested in something like that.
Can I hear the dates one more time?
March 17th to May 1st, and it's only one night a week. They're usually like Tuesdays and Thursdays. But whatever works in your schedule, I'm sure they would accommodate. All right, then the letter that you guys asked me to write MDT about reducing the speed limit in front of Milwaukee Railroad Park. I sent it, so the proper channel is to send it to your county commission first, because the county commission is like your conduit to the state DOT. So I sent it to both of them at the same time, and Commissioner Boyer emailed and said that they're gonna talk about it on February 3rd when they have their monthly meeting with the county road superintendent, who is Levi Ewan. If any of you know who that is,
We got some pull there.
you might have some pull. He doesn't think that MDT would actually, it's only about 300 feet is where they would be moving the 25-foot sign back kind of towards the silos, right? Or maybe where like the church's welcome you sign is right before you get onto Cottonwood Street there. And he didn't think that for that, the MDT would do the full-blown study, especially since they've already done a study in this vicinity. So we will know more by the next council meeting, but she thought that had good progress. And then legislative sessions in full swing at the state. I'm sure you guys know that. And the league is asking, Kelly and I are getting all sorts of emails. We'll bring them to you if we think it's important to Three Forks. But I would like to say we are ahead of the game in most of the other communities on things. Like, they have a public records request and they want to max it out that you can't even charge for what is it? There's up to an hour, like for the first hour, where we say we don't charge after 15 minutes because most easy things are 15 minutes, but we do them all the time up to 30 minutes and don't charge. So it's like no big deal to give them an hour. It's not worth fighting over it anyway. And, but there's one House Bill 298. It's going to be heard this Thursday at 10 a.m. in front of the House State Administrative Committee. And this bill would prohibit third-class cities and towns, which we are, from holding an election to allow or prohibit recreational marijuana. And this was something where we had the opportunity to put it on the ballot last time and charge an additional percentage of tax, I think it was, for our city if you had that. The voters would have had to prove that that was the case. You guys chose not to, but you guys at that table have also changed since that time. And so Montana League of Cities and Towns is asking if we would, any of the third-class cities or towns, like how many towns would be interested in actually holding an election? So if they take this away from us, should they fight for the third-class cities or not? So what do you think?
Didn't we get quite a few bucks from that?
We do it from the county. We get it from the county, but it's not our own.
the county collects money and then they disperse it to the county and then to the cities within their county. So we do get that, but there's an additional tax the city could charge. But right now we
But
don't have any.
this is just to allow to prohibit it. Like,
Right.
So if you, do you want the
Option.
voters to say marijuana is not allowed, any stores allowed in this town at all? Which, bless you.
So this bill would say, if it passed, a community is not allowed to
ban.
not allow it.
You can't have an election to make that decision. Is what I think
Either-
it's saying,
So that
Word-
means you
word
can't
it.
ban it.
right?
Cause like, and I might be incorrect, this might just be secondary sources or whatever, but I think like Manhattan has prohibited
Yeah.
Marijuana dispensaries in the city limits.
Mhm.
And so if this bill passed, Manhattan couldn't prohibit in the city limits?
No, it
or-
says that the bill would prohibit third-class cities and towns from holding an election to allow or prohibit recreational marijuana. To me, that means that the rest of the people don't say it. Doesn't mean that you can't zone it.
Like a zoning or
Yeah.
town council still would have say
You can
yay or
still zone
nay.
it to an
Just
area in
taking
the
it
corner
away
of
from
town. You're not
us,
prohibiting
The
it,
decision of the
right?
people.
Okay.
That bill seems silly.
I think it seems silly too, but I mean, I just relaying what they asked what the towns would do, and I'm, most of the time, like, I feel like we can't speak on behalf of the town because these meetings come up so quickly, sometimes the same day we're learning about them. And so we speak on your behalf, like the one about charging for an hour, big deal, you know, what?
I have a question. Is that like, I know the dirty dozen of businesses, do they have to already come to the city council in order to be, like, I know that that was the thing with the church and the.
It is allowed in certain, in a commercial district as a permitted use. They can just come in and get a business license, but they have to meet the state regulations, which are 500 feet from a church or a school or a daycare.
Right.
So that pretty much eliminates the central business
lot of
district
all Main
because
Street,
there's so
yeah.
many churches in the central business district.
Like, are there
But-
other fail safes, I guess, is my question.
There is in Three Forks, but you could still have a commercial, you could still have a business in the residential district by having a conditional use permit, which would go before.
They have to get one though, right?
Yeah, they have to apply for it and get approved for it, which if the neighborhood didn't care, then the neighborhood didn't care and
It would be a workaround to a election about that.
absolutely, yeah.
I think prohibiting an election seems a little silly.
I do, too. I think it's one of those weird things, they're kind of taking away your rights, but it also doesn't really prohibit you from acting on having marijuana businesses, so. Want me to tell them,
But
we
the
don't.
council
go
might-
here.
You know, when these are hard decisions, you may want to ask your people what they think, right, by an election. That's
That's true.
the advantage of it,
Yeah.
right, is you get to say, we don't want to decide for you, we want you guys to tell us.
Just send them back. Don't tell us what to do.
Okay, I will do, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's-
and then I have one more.
More about it.
Last, we got an email today from someone named Phil Rogers, who owns two 25-foot lots on Main Street next to the quilt shop. So in between the quilt shop and that thrift store, that's actually 4 lots, so half. He is going to put them on the market and is offering it to the city at a less than market value and without realty fees if the city is interested. I just said I would relay it and that you couldn't make any decision. He didn't provide a number of what the low market value is. So do you want me to put this on an upcoming agenda to have an actual decision and he can attend through Zoom? Or just let him put it on the market or whatever? I don't know if we have an idea of what we would.
He
need it
got a
for.
park or something like that, but the taxable value is 151,000. So I'm sure he'll ask for something around there or higher
For
for
both.
both lots. They're 25-foot lots, so it's only 7,000 square feet,
25 feet wide.
Yeah, like
And
city
100
hall, 2
Yeah.
city halls.
2 city halls, yeah.
Well, it is, so. But you can't make a decision tonight, so I'm just relaying it and we can you can let me know if you want Randy to put it on an agenda, right? And that's all I have.
If there's any interest.
Yeah.
I do have one thing since
Oh.
Crystal reminded me. I have been testifying for one of the bills, House Bill 34.
I don't
34.
remember.
The grant money we got from the state for our match for our FEMA grant, if all that eventually comes through or not, federal money. But they are wanting to make that resilience fund permanent. Right now, every 2 years, I have to go to the legislature and ask for that money. So they've asked Three Forks to speak for that because we are their biggest recipient of that. So I've testified twice. Was the Budget Appropriations Committee last week, and they're not sure if they're going to get out of that committee. But that's one thing I've done.
Think
Are
we
they
do.
nice to you?
That's super important.
It's a little intimidating to
Yeah.
do that. I've never done it before but I'm on Zoom, so they can't see me
It's
because they don't turn your camera on.
a good education in holding a public meeting.
Yes,
It's a really good education.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Representative.
And
Mr.
if you have
Chairman.
a question, you ask it of
Thank
the
you.
chair. I ask the chairman if I can ask George a question and then he says yes, you can ask the question and then he says yes to George, you can answer the question. And it's like, everybody just talks to the chairman, really.
Mhm.
Crystal, any more?
I don't have any more things.
Yes, what do you got for us tonight?
Come around this side here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I don't have too much. We have, in December, we responded to 147 calls for service. The city limits, and January to date, we're at a. So numbers again are fairly normal, on track, historically for what we see at this time of year. Things tend to settle down a little bit before the summer, so. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Randy?
Susan, do you have anything for us tonight?
I don't, but thanks for asking.
Yes, did somebody say my name?
I did, George, gotcha.
Okay. Okay, is there any reports from council committees?
Did we consider that meeting the other day, committee meeting on?
Yeah, that was a water and sewer committee, right?
The disaster meeting.
Oh, no, but please report on that. Unless Randy was going to. Were you gonna report on that? Our ranking? For Patrick Lonergan?
Yeah, and we changed our rankings, didn't we?
Yeah, are you gonna report on that or do you want Jean to?
I have not written anything down.
Okay, you wanna wing it? I can help you.
All right.
Okay.
Well, last week, we met, at the library in the conference room. There was, I guess, 4 council persons and the mayor and the clerks, and we talked about, natural disasters or man-made disasters that can possibly happen in the town. And actually, I think I even brought the sheets with me that we worked on. But anyway, they, the possibility of things happening and what we discussed on that, what we thought was the possibilities, and you go through different things here. You go through drought, severe weather, wildfires, flooding, and so that was the take on it. And, you talk about the Willow Creek Dam, the possibility of it breaking and that causing flooding, the Madison Dam, if something happens to it. But I think most of us, what was probably fresh in our minds then was the California wildfires. And so, wildfires is something that, we can think about pretty seriously around here. Earthquakes was brought up since we sit on an earthquake zone, and we've had 2 of them that have done considerable damage to some of the buildings in town over the years. But that was the gist of the meeting. And then the other part that comes in is, okay, you can talk about these things, the disasters, whatever, but, what are you gonna do? So like, we have a major earthquake. Where do we go to meet? Let's say the fire chief, the Gallatin County Sheriff, the mayor, city council, possibly, this kind of things, where is it? If you have an earthquake is, what buildings are gonna be safe? Where do you go? You may be meeting in the middle of Main Street, because it might be the only safe place. But, I think in most communities, as I can see, is it seems like the school is, in small towns, is a place where most people try to meet if you have considerable damage. And so you talk about these things, and I personally brought up, an earthquake, you can't leave Three Forks without going over a bridge. And so if you had severe damage to all the bridges and they were shut down, the beauty that we have is that we got a great airport for a small town that could do, could at least evacuate severely injured people and this sort of thing out. But you need, the other thing you need to think about is gas leaks and power going out. And so, you have to have Northwestern Energy included in this loop also, a ruptured gas main or power lines that are down that are a threat to people walking into them or driving into them and stuff. So these were the things we talked about. And Patrick Lonigan, who wasn't there, but he's had this job now probably for 25
15
years
at
or
least,
so, wants people to know that, we need to think about natural disasters. And, you think about a wildfire around here. Well, could it happen? Yes, it can happen real easy. And especially, we don't have usually 100-mile-an-hour winds around here like they had in California. But Gardner, Montana had 104-mile-an-hour winds last week. So, we could have 100-mile-an-hour winds, and with a fire, things to think about. And so, I think that's one of the things that we need to just keep, update on file, where we meet, who's who's responsible for certain things, and we have that wrote down in,
We do, it's in
Yeah.
that, I didn't print that whole part of the
Yeah.
chapter.
so.
So the emergency management plan is like this big. And we actually enacted, every disaster is considered like a different appendix in there. And so different appendices could be triggered by like coronavirus. At that time, we had all sorts of things. We couldn't meet in public. So where are we gonna hold our meetings and where are we gonna do that? So we had to adopt an emergency resolution and enact all these specific appendices. And so Patrick does send us emails probably monthly about what's going on, and I'm gonna start forwarding them on to you, and I'm sorry if I inundate your guys' box, but Kelly and I don't attend all the meetings because they're in Bozeman and they're offered by Zoom. We did attend a couple this last
Mm.
year, but those didn't count towards this, and we are required to have some of these emergency management plans in order to be considered in the county's emergency management plan. And we didn't have that in time, and so that's why we held that meeting, and Randy had said you guys are all welcome to come, and we advertise it as a possible quorum just in case everybody showed up. So
I have gone up to meet with Patrick personally. And this was how this was set up. And so he asked me, you know, what's the big thing? Like Gene brought up wildfires. And I did say that last summer on Facebook and other things that we were talking about rolling blackouts.
Yeah.
Will Northwest Energy have to shut off our power? And I did say that in our told him that we have generators at our wastewater plants to keep the sewage flowing. And but we are putting in generators for our new water pumps and everything else so that we can keep the water flowing too. But so it was a nice meeting with him, and thank you, Gene, for writing all this stuff down. Appreciate it.
see, memories don't always fail.
I went up to see him and he was kind of, you know, the last meeting they had, he showed me about this. We said we should do this every 5 years. Was our fire chief, Keith Ani, and George Wright from the fire chief from Willow Creek, and those were the only two attended. And so their wants were different from ours this time, and so anyway, it was interesting, and hopefully we'll just, I'll keep up with Patrick.
We did, you know, with our ranking too of what it was existing, send it to the school, because active shooter is on there. And we sent it to the ambulance to see, because the airport is on there, and they said, well, you don't cover skydiving, and we have a skydiving business. It's not gonna be a huge population impact, but it could be quite an emergency if something happens, as well as we rank up to the ranking on the airport, like just anything at the aviation, because our airport is busier and busier, and it's instrument only. There's no one in the tower, you know, so there's things that we did change and include, but in those emails, like, it's not required for us all to go to all of them. It's just if we can go to some of them, we get 3/4 representation there. So that's why I'll forward them on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Gene. Are there any other council committee reports?
Did we report on the sewer and water when we met with Susan at the last meeting?
Can you pull up the minutes? I'll look at the minutes. I don't have. Oh, no, I haven't done the minutes yet. I don't know. I can't remember. I think you did.
We
Yes,
talked about the
yes,
new
because we
well.
had the change order for 105,000.
Yeah, okay, so,
And-
all
He
right.
brought that up too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, unfinished business, Kelly, floodplain mitigation.
We're still talking with MDT. We'll have a meeting. Our normal monthly call is actually gonna be in person on the
4th
The
of
4th.
February.
February. Headwaters Economics, Great West, they'll all be coming because Three Forks is presenting at Missoula, like I said last time, so we're trying to figure out what we're gonna say. And then Headwaters wants some feedback on how they've done for us and what they can do better. So it'll be from 10 to 1. And it probably will be at the library in the Montana room is where we're thinking now. They wanted to go to Bridger Brewing, but
They don't open at 10.
yeah, they don't open at 10, so
What day is that on?
Fourth.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, I think it's the 4th.
You guys are welcome.
Yeah, anybody that wants to.
And what time did you say?
10 a.m.
10 to 1 is what they're figuring.
I can report on the water projects a little bit if you want.
Yes,
So we have, you signed that change order for 105,000 last time, though. She'll have another one that's an additional 25,000 just because there was she threw out a number of what the building would cost, and then when the structural engineer got back to her, it was 25,000 more than what her estimate was. So we'll have a change order to that task order. And but we did send it out for bid, and so the bid is on our website. I think it gets published tomorrow. And then, or Thursday, and same within the Bozeman Daily Chronicle and the various plans exchanges and things like that, and it'll be published for several times until we have a pre-bid conference meeting on, I want to say, March 16th or somewhere around there in that week. It's on our calendar. And then the bids are due by March 26th, and she will open them in Helen, so that everybody, if they want to submit them, it's going to be at the Great West office.
Is the distribution line out to bid too?
I don't know if the distribution line is in that or not. I
Okay.
feel like that might be going on in April.
Okay.
That's what I know. That's what I remember. I probably know more, but that's what I remember.
thank you. New business, is there any public comments or concerns? Gloria?
No problem.
For items not on the agenda. I do not have any announcements. I plan on attending that meeting on the 4th, Kelly.
Okay.
With you. And is there any other council announcements tonight? Gene?
Yes. I'm not quite sure how to say this, and I hope I don't make anybody mad. But I'm on the board of directors of HRDC. And sometime this spring, Heather Gannier, who is the CEO of HRDC, is going to come before the Three Forks City Council and present. And to be very honest with you, what she's going to present for is to maybe ask the city for money. And what we're, her talk a lot, and I don't know for sure exactly all she's going to say, but she's going to be talking about the benefits that Three Forks sees from the HRDC organization. And to be honest with you, that, it takes a lot of money to do what they're doing with their homeless shelter and their food banks and stuff. And the Three Forks Food Bank is part of HRDC, but there's a lot of other things that people don't know about that they do, the weatherization, help with heating bills, this kind of things. And it's just doesn't happen in Bozeman or Belgrade or whatever. It happens all over the valley. And she's just not picking on Three Forks. They're going to do Manhattan, Belgrade, probably not West Yellowstone. But to see if there is any kind of an appetite for the city to put in funds. And so since I'm on the governance committee with HRDC, I've been tasked to talk about this. And then Bruce Grubbs, who's also on that committee, is going to be talking to Belgrade and Manhattan and stuff. City of Bozeman already kicks in a considerable amount of money. Gallatin County Commission, Gallatin County puts in quite a bit of funds. And so I just wanted to make you aware of it. But if you are really opposed to even having Heather come and present, please let me know and I'll head her off so you don't run around to the building or something. But I also have this handout that I just got the other day, and if you could, and it's about, I don't know if you heard about this mental health thing for young people. And HRDC donated the land for this thing, and they are teaming up with Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch to offer mental health to young people. And the suicide rate in Gallatin County for young people is high. And so this is part of it. And this is just a thing that they're trying to get out to whatever. One of the members of our committee is with Bozeman Deaconess Hospital on our governance committee, and Bozeman Deaconess is going to put up $500,000 to help get this thing going and up and running with people and stuff. So, I don't know all about the workings of it, but that's just a little brochure they put out. So I thought I'd give you a little heads up, and if you think I'm out of line, please tell me, and I won't be doing this kind of stuff. But, so thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gene. Okay, our next item is for, our next meeting will be on 2/11, and it sounds like we're gonna have a pretty big meeting.
The resolution to adopt the service area report and maps. And I just want to give you guys a heads up, the service area reports were a draft that were adopted in the CIP. So the CIP at some point will need to be amended to up to this one, which will be another resolution.
This time, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'd like to add a thing to the agenda for I'd like to have, Gene Townsend put on there to ask permission to apply for a AARP Community Challenge Grant. Tomorrow, I'm gonna be on a Zoom call at noon to talk about this stuff. And so, but if anybody's got any ideas, I got some ideas what I'd maybe like to put in for some funds. But if somebody else does, let me know and I'll work on this grant maybe. And I also got another, actually I got two, put the Gallatin County Open Spaces. I just got a thing from Whitney today.
You already got approval for that in December,
To apply for
to
it.
apply for the grant. It's in the minutes.
Or-
I'll put it on. if
Oh, because I
it's not
told
in
you I was
there.
gonna put in for
Yeah.
2 grants.
So I
Okay,
do
yeah.
think it's already in there. But I'll check.
All right. No, I think you're right. But I hate to say that.
I have to say it too early with that too. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion. Second.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.